Alright, so I briefly went through sound selection. I'm going to go into more detail about picking the right 808 and kick when we get to that stage. But for now, I want to focus on the snare pattern or the rimshot pattern, whichever sound you've chosen. So the pattern of the main snare, clap, or rimshot is one of the most simple things, but at the same time, it's one of the most important things that's going to separate a drill beat to a trap beat. So for a normal trap beat, you might have a pattern like this. The rhythm of a trap pattern essentially lands on every third beat. What I mean by that is, if I turn the metronome on, if I count along with these beats, you're going to see that this snare lands on every third beat. So look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Every time I got to the third beat, it landed on a snare. That's like the most basic trap pattern. The main difference with a drill pattern is the second snare most of the time. So usually the pattern matching beats will go like this. The first one will land on the third, the second one will land on the fourth, next one will land on the third, and then after that we'll land on the fourth. So let's just count that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Let me just play that again. So you can see the second one has been delayed slightly. Instead of the second one playing on the third, it's playing on the fourth. But that doesn't mean that you have to stick with that pattern. It just means it's a good starting foundation to separate a drill beat from a trap beat. So that's a really basic pattern, but I want to show you some other variations. So first of all, I could add some filler notes, like maybe here. I could do something like this, so I could keep everything here the same, but this last one, just bring it right to the end. So again, just delaying it slightly, but I like the way they sound sometimes. What you could also do is kind of reverse the way they land. So instead of having the first one land on the third beat, you could have that land on the fourth, and then the next one land on the third beat. So it would go like this. And then again, I could add some filler notes. So that's just a few options that you could work with. Sometimes I won't even click them in. I'll just hit record and then I'll just have a listen and see what comes to my head. So for example, I could just hit the record button, might turn the metronome off. C on my keyboard will usually play the original sample. So let's just see what I can think of. Okay, so that's the pattern I thought of. You can see that they're all at different velocities. You can see some of them aren't perfectly on grid. So what I'm going to do is click up here, go to line, and then press Ctrl and A to highlight everything, then Ctrl and Q. And that's going to snap it to the nearest line. Then I'm going to hold Shift down here, click and drag. And that's going to make sure all of the snares are at the same velocity. You don't always have to make sure they're at the same velocity. Depends what kind of vibe you want to go for. Especially when it comes to counter snares. I'm going to show you some velocity tricks when we get to that stage. But for the main snare, I wanted them to be the same velocity this time. Let's just have a listen. So I was sticking to that main pattern of landing them on the 3 and the 4, but then when it got to this stage, I delayed this one and just added a couple of filler notes. Just going back to sound selection a little bit, what I sometimes do is get a pattern in like this, and then once I've got the pattern, I'll flick through some of the sounds to see what fits with the sample. And the quickest way to do that is first make sure that the sample is selected. So chip snare is the one that I chose before. I'm going to click this box next to it until it's got a green light around it. And then if you're using a mouse, you can click the wheel in, and that actually changes the sound. It keeps the MIDI file the same, but it'll change the sound. So for example, if I wanted to try this crispy snare, I can click the mouse wheel in. And whilst it's playing, I can just flick through some. I like this one too. Here's a quick cycling through loads of drum kits and then you forgot one that you originally chose. All you have to do is open the sound, click and drag, and it will take you to that sound. So for example, if I was trying to find this counter snare, it's going to take me to that sample. This is in FL Studio anyway. I'm going to go back to the chip snare. I think this one fits the vibe more than any of the others. I just wanted to show you how to quickly select sounds. What you could also do is, instead of having the filler notes in this snare, you could actually bring another snare in. So for example, let's bring this one in. So I'm going to go to this snare, take the filler notes, which was this one and this one. I'm just holding Control, Shift, clicking and dragging to select multiple notes. And then I'm going to press Control and X to cut them. Go back into the channel rack, make sure that the second snare is selected. Hit F7 to go to the piano roll. And then Control and V. That's going to paste them in. Let's see how this sounds. Sometimes you might think that you've got the wrong snare or it doesn't sound right, but in actual fact, you could just be playing it on the wrong note. So I could go into the piano roll. The shortcut to go to the piano roll, by the way, is F7. And then I press Control and A to highlight everything, and then Shift and down. Could bring it down a semitone. Bring it up one. I actually like the way it sounds up. I'm gonna leave it here. I'm going to get rid of the sounds at the top because these are sounds that I usually keep in my template, but I want to show you everything from scratch this time. One thing that I'd recommend getting into the habit of doing as well is naming your sounds before you've sent them to mixer channels, and I'll explain why in a second. So let's call this one snare and this one counter snare. The reason I do that is because once I eventually link these to the mixer, if I've named them, then it's going to copy the name across. So instead of saying insert 10 and insert 11, it's going to have the exact name here. I'm not going to link them yet though. I'm going to show you once I've got the other sounds in.